In my past life, I said, I'm going to come back as a woman and bring Ayurveda back to the people. I would be writing that book and I would look out the window and my fingers were just typing and I just knew things. Ancient Sanskrit terms that I can't make this up. And then after they fact check, everything was all correct. That was my first experience of channeling. We are so deeply connected to one another, let alone how deeply connected we are to our body. People ask me, what were the shifts you made in your consciousness to have your reality change so much? And I realized it was stepping into my dharma. And these synchronicities will guide you to a place that your soul could never imagine right now. We fear the darkness so much because it's the unknown, but it's only when you go into those unknowns that you remember who you are. The longer you stay in the void, the more magical life becomes. And then you stop being afraid of these void periods, but you actually see them as quantum leaps. Deep in my soul, I knew there had to be something more. Everything that we desire, we're desiring it because there's a version of us that already has it. And here's where it gets crazier. So let's get right into it. Let's get into some trauma. Let's trauma bond a little bit. Okay. So I had been on this spiritual path. My parents were not spiritual. My parents were refugees from Iran. They had escaped the revolution war that had happened there. So it was very much around growing up, it was around be academic, get a job, survive, or especially if you're a woman, go get married, So it definitely was not around me living my dharma. There was no concept of that at all. But like so many people who listen to this podcast, deep in my soul, I knew there had to be something more. I knew that I wasn't meant to live the same day in and out. And I remember telling my mom, I'm like, I want to do something that I love and make money doing it. She's like, yeah, so does everyone. The reality is people just don't like their jobs and you just have to accept this. And I remember thinking why do they tell us as kids to follow our dreams? And then later on when we do, it's we're considered crazy for doing so. So I had been studying international development. I was on a path to be an international human rights lawyer, but through working with different NGOs, I realized just the corruption that was going on, unfortunately. So I had no idea what I was going to do. And I was kind of in this trial and error stage of, let me try this and let me try that. And kind of just throwing spaghetti at the wall. And at that time, I started to go through really bad health issues. So it started with digestive issues, which became worse into hormonal imbalances. And I did not get my period for over 2 years. And doctors said that my body had shut down and gone into perimenopause. And when that happens in your early 20s, you're set up for, having osteoporosis early in life, a whole host of lifelong issues, let alone, not being able to have a child. So I couldn't focus on helping the world. I had to learn how to heal myself. And it was, I think a lot of us healers, we have to go through that self-healing journey. So I just became obsessed with learning everything I could on how to heal. And so I'm studying traditional Chinese medicine, which brought me to Ayurveda, the sister science of yoga. I had been practicing yoga. I never knew the rest of the Vedic wisdom attached to it. And I remember I took my first dosha quiz, which are the Ayurvedic mind-body types. And I took the type and it said, you are a Vata, air type. And it started to describe my personality. It was you're creative, you think outside the box, you love to travel, you're spiritual, but you start a lot of projects that you don't finish. You can be anxious, you can be in your head, you can change your mind really quickly. Then in your body, you have bloating, gas, constipation, low hormones, everything in my mind. I was this is if I die, read this at my funeral, this is just me, And for the first time, I felt understood because I had been going to doctors, a gastroenterologist who would just talk to me about my digestion, and then an endocrinologist who would just talk about hormones. And they were all so different and separate. And these doctors would prescribe me medication, get on hormone replacement therapy, get on antidepressants for your gut, get on all these prescriptions. And I knew intuitively there had to be something deeper. And so when I started to learn about Ayurveda, I saw the mind and the body are connected. And because in my mind, I was scattered, my energy was scattered, right? So then in my body, I had the excess of this air energy, which is cold, dry, which leads to bloating, gas, constipation, dry skin, amenorrhea, all the physical things that I had. So I just became obsessed, when you're obsessed with something, it's all you want to do is read about it, talk about it, think about it. I need to learn everything I can about Ayurveda. And I had been doing volunteer work in India already at the time, but I was a raw vegan before that. And being a raw vegan in India is unheard of. They used to call me the cow because they had never seen someone just eating raw greens. And so I decided, you know, it's funny because I went to India to teach them about health and sanitation, but then I ended up studying and learning from them. And so I went to Ayurveda school, and I started to just everything that I had, I would share about it. I would blog about it, share about it on Instagram. And I saw so many women similar to me had digestive hormonal imbalances, anxiety. This was a phenomenon. And so they started to really get curious about this Ayurvedic wisdom. And I realized I could write a book to help modernize this, kind of put this in the language that people can understand. And maybe these health challenges happen to me for a reason. And maybe I can use the experience that I'm in right now to be of service to other people. And maybe that's actually the way that I can help the world. So I'm like, what is this? Like, is this even making sense? And it made all the struggles I went through so worth it. So I'm like, I'm going to write a book on Ayurveda. I had never met an author. I didn't know the first thing about writing a book. I was like, this book is going to be on the shelves of Barnes and Nobles. No idea how, but I'm just putting that out there. And so I would just write. Like, I didn't know the process. I'm like, I'm just going to write the book. And then like, once it's written, I'll like figure out the next step. So I would just write and write and write. And by then my parents were like, you are crazy. You don't have a book deal. You're not making money doing this. You need to get a normal job or get married. But you just living in India by yourself, writing this book, like you're delusional. Like you're talking to these hippies who, you know, are telling you this nonsense of following your dreams, and it's not true. You need to get grounded. And what they saw was like I was going to end up homeless, and they were deeply afraid. Right. So it turned into a lot of tension, into like me deeply wanting them to like understand me, see me, like validate me, give me that approval, that pat on the head that we're all like seeking from our parents. And, you know, I had to learn to eventually let that go. And when I came back to Boston where they live, I remember this really bad fight of my dad just saying, you're a complete loser, you're a failure, and you're not my daughter, and I want nothing to do with you. And I went downstairs into my childhood room, and I just fell on my knees, and I was crying so deeply. And, you know, my like knees were like wet in my tears. And I like looked up at all my toys, and I'm like, why did they even like do that? Like, why did they tell me to follow my dreams? Why did they tell me to do all this? And here I am. And now I'm dead to them. But in that moment, this wave of liberation actually came over me of, well, if I'm dead to my dad, then I no longer need to live for his approval anymore. And I get to live life now for my own terms and for myself. And that was actually the freedom that I needed to cut the cord of that underlying thing underneath it all of, do you love me if I do this? Am I enough for you if I do that? Are you proud of me if I show up this way? And like so deeply wanting that, of just let that die. And I did not know still how I was going to make a book deal, how I was going to make money. I was living, Amrit, in a $2 a night hut in South India with rats in it. That like, when I tell you rats in it, I'm talking, they would always be on my little tin roof. And once I woke up, and I had like a padlock hut. And I remember I was like, why is my underwear always like through the wall? Like this makes no sense because I have a padlock and I'm the only one with the key. And then one night I woke up, and on my mosquito net, the rat was like 5 inches from my face. It had fallen on the mosquito net, and it was like stuck there. And I had to get my chappar, the little sandals, and throw it at the rat to try to get it up. And I realized the rats were stealing my underwear to try to build a home. So that's where I was living, you know? But I was like, I would still rather be here and put all my energy into figuring out how to make this book happen than go back and give up on this. Like that was the length that I was willing to go to. And so from hitting that like rock bottom point of being disowned by my dad, I started to just live for myself, stop trying to explain myself, stop trying to, again, live for that approval. And all of a sudden the doors started opening, and I started meeting the right people. That I met this girl who had a book deal, and then she said she would introduce me to her literary agent. And then the literary agent, you know, finally, flash forward a year later, I had written the book. We shopped the book at 30 different publishers. When I say shop a book, what the process, if someone's listening to this and they want to write a book, is you find a literary agent. Now, the literary agent gives your book proposal to all the different editors at different publishing houses. And then the editors choose which book are they interested in publishing. So this agent gave it to like 30 different publishers, and they all said no. And in fact, they all said the exact things that my parents told me. You're not a doctor. You're too young. No one cares about Ayurveda. It's not going to happen. And I was like, damn, like maybe this is it. Like I gave it a try. I spent 2 years on this, like all my life savings that I was like health coaching. I would invest it into editing the book, all the things. And maybe that's it. But I just knew the story can't end here. It can't, because it's only a failure if you let it go. Right. But if I keep going, it can't be a failure. So I'm like, you know what? I don't know how this is going to happen, but Spirit, I trust that I went through this journey for a deeper reason, and you show me, you guide me, and I will listen, and I will show up in whatever way it looks like. And I drop my ego. It doesn't even need to be my book, as long as I can just share this wisdom with people. 4 days later, I kid you not, Amrit, the agent said, one of the publishers was looking for someone to write the Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda, part of the Idiot's Guide series. They had an author who was already writing this book. You have 6 months to write this book. This author was 4 months in, and she was like, this is too much work. I can't do this. So she quit. So they were looking for someone to start to finish write a brand new textbook on Ayurveda, like a 450-page textbook in 2 months. And she was like, do you know anyone? I'm like, me? I'll do it. She's like, you have to write a whole new book in their tone, in their way. Like, I don't know if they have the Idiot's Guide books in Australia, but they're like the dummies books that it's like,
yeah, we got them.
Fun fact for you. Yeah, exactly. It's like a very different way. And
I think I've got the Idiot's Guide to Yoga somewhere back there. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, yeah. You're on it. Yeah. So part of me was just like, how am I going to write a brand new book? It took me 2 years to even write my version of the book. How am I going to write a new one in their tone? But then I was like, you know what? I might die in a year. And if this is the only chance I have to write a book, I'm going to take it. So I went to the bookstore, the Barnes and Nobles, and I read every single Idiot's Guide book that they had. And I stayed there the whole day until they closed. And that night I stayed up all night and I wrote the first, the table of contents. That was the first thing that they wanted. And they were like, oh, this is actually really good. Can you send us what your first chapter would look like? Went back, read all their first chapters. How do they write their tone? Wrote that chapter. And then 2 days later, I was hired. And I was like, oh my God, now, like, I was excited, but like, how am I going to do this? And I just decided, you know what? Even if this isn't the big picture of what I want, this is the next step. Right. And I want to really share this because I think sometimes we want to follow our dream, but we want it to be the dream right away. And sometimes there's necessary steps that we need, initiations that we need to get there.
Resistance.
Exactly. So listen to this. So I wrote that book 2 months, 16 hours a day. I was just writing and writing, but it was crazy because sometimes, and I don't share this with everyone, but sometimes I would be writing that book and I would look out the window and my fingers were just typing and I just knew things. It was like something deeper was coming through. And I'm talking like specific Ayurvedic information I've never studied. And I was like, that was my first experience of channeling. Because it's like gunas and subgunas. It's ancient Sanskrit terms that like I can't make this up. And then after they fact check, everything was all correct. And so I really believe in my past life, I was an Ayurvedic rishi. I was a scholar of Ayurveda, and I came back in this lifetime to go through these health challenges to write this book. And here's where it gets crazier. And I'm going to take you a year after that. This is a Saturday. The book is going to be published on a Tuesday. I'm at this random yoga and science conference in Queen's University in New York. And I'm sitting there. It's like a bunch of science, why breathing is good for you. I'm like, okay, I don't need the science. I trust it. And I'm like, you know what? The only thing that can make right now super lit is if Deepak Chopra just walked on stage because he was like my idol. And they're like, finish up the talk. And they're like, oh, and here's our sponsor, Deepak Chopra. This is crazy. So then I'm like, oh my God, like this is probably the only chance in my life I'm going to see him. I need to just go up to him and just tell him like what an influence he's been in my life. Like I just need to tell him this. And so the talk ends. There's like 1,000+ people. It's an auditorium. They're all leaving. They're all going up to lunch. Something came through me again. It said, just go down the stairs and walk onto the stage and stand next to him.
That takes That takes a lot of courage to do something like that. That is like, because I think a lot of people think about. I think a lot of people think about like speaking to their mentors and their idols when they go see them at a conference, but then they're just like, oh no, it's okay, they're busy. You know? Right. And you not even like waited for him to come off the stage. You literally just walked up there.
I just walked down. I walked up. I was just standing next to him, and I'm like, when he turns and looks at me, I have no idea what I'm going to say. But I'm just going to trust it.
Hey there, guys. Just taking a quick sec to thank all of you that have subscribed to this podcast here on YouTube. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel, and I cannot thank you enough. It is such a pleasure, an honor, and a privilege to be your brother, walking this path by your side in this way. Thank you for your incredible love and support. For all of you that aren't yet subscribed, please do take a moment just below as I'm saying subscribe, the button is lighting up. Please click the button, hit that bell notification icon. It helps with everything we're doing here to champion positivity and peace and prosperity around the world. Back to today's episode.
So he turns, he's like, hi. And I'm like, hello, Dr. Chopra. You have been such an influence in my work. And I wanted to share with you this book that I just finished writing. It's actually with your same publisher, Penguin Random House. And I would love to share it with you. And he's like, okay, here's my email. You can send me the PDF. And I was like, oh, like, this is the best day of my entire life. Like, I have Deepak Chopra's email. Like, if I die, I'm okay now. Like that life, to me was
life
enough.
Goals,
like the story ended there. I got his email. Like, I would have been good. Okay. So this is where we're telling the real OG of the story right now here. So I'm so happy. I was like, was such an incredible experience. I sent him the PDF of the book. I was honestly not expecting to ever hear back from him again. You know, I was just like, I got to send him the book and that's it. And next day, I want to say I was walking on the streets of New York. Mind you, I don't live in New York. I live with my grandparents because I still can't afford rent. So in LA, and I was just visiting a friend, and I was walking on the street, crossing the street, and I hear someone saying, can someone help me cross the street? And I'm like running late to meet my friend. I'm like eating while walking, but voice in my head was like, Sahara, if you're a good person, you're going to help this man cross the street. So I turn around and I go, and it's a homeless man. And I'm like, sir, where would you like to go? I can help you cross the street. And he like takes me by the arm. I can still smell him today. He was like putrid smelling. Like he was someone that people wouldn't want to look at. He had discolored face. And he takes me by the arm and he's like, can you actually walk me 2 blocks down and down the stairs into the subway? And I was just like, sure, why not? So we're locked arms and I'm like, so where are you from? Turns out he was a refugee from Iraq who had escaped from the war. And what's crazy is the war that my mom escaped from was the Iran-Iraq war, the opposing side. Right? So we were talking about that and he was telling me about his experience. I'm talking about my mom's experience. It was just really beautiful actually to see, like, you know, the people just suffer because of war, but ultimately it brought both of us to this country. So we had like a beautiful conversation and I put him into the subway and the elevator is about to close. And I'm like, by the way, sir, where are you going? He's like, oh, I'm going to this university. I'm a professor of physics. I was like, what? Like, I thought he was homeless. He definitely looked homeless to me, but like, he's a professor of physics. Like, so I'm just like, I walk away. I was like, wow, that was such a beautiful, like Humans of New York moment. Like life is so amazing. I check my phone and there's an email from Deepak Chopra. Literally the moment that the elevator door closed. And the email says, what's your number? I'd like to call you. And I'm like, what is happening right now? Am I in trouble? Like, is he mad at me? Like, you know, like, what is happening? Like, why does he want to talk to me? And so I gave him my phone number and he calls me on that same walk. And he's like, where are you going to be on Tuesday? I would love to invite you to my You Are the Universe seminar. I said, oh, sir, I don't actually live in New York. I live in Los Angeles. He says, perfect, because it's in San Diego. I'm like, great. So, and I was literally flying back on Monday. That Tuesday I literally slept in my car. I'm like writing like yantras, like just channeling, meditating. Like I have no idea what to expect. I don't know what he wants to talk to me about. I'm in the crowd watching him talk, shaking. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm even this close to him. And then so after he walks on stage, he's like, come with me. Brings me into this like hotel room where there's like 4 of his team members. They start asking me all these like questions of like, why are you there? What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. And so I'm just answering the questions. And then he's like, I read the PDF of your book and I was really blown away by the way that you were able to modernize Ayurvedic wisdom. And I would love to invite you on faculty of Chopra. And I was just like, what? Like, what? And he offered to write the foreword of my book. And like all of a sudden, I went from like being rejected by all these publishers to Deepak Chopra writing the foreword of that book. And so I just put in everything I could into getting that book out there. And it became like one of the best ever selling Idiot's Guides books, because I was just like, I was treating it like this is like my wedding, like I'm just getting it anywhere I could, And then as soon as that book came out, because it did so well, because I didn't even have a podcast at that time, but I just was like, I was just studying everything I could, getting on podcasts, making YouTube videos, doing book order things. I didn't have any business coach or anything. I was just figuring it out. And from figuring it out, the publishers were like, okay, I had pitched them of bringing my modern Ayurveda book back. And they're like, okay, now we'll publish your modern approach to Ayurveda, which was called Eat, Feel Fresh. And then flash forward which Deepak Chopra also wrote the foreword of. Now my life radically shifted. Now I finally was like, oh, this wasn't all in my head. For many years it was. For many years, it was like a wishful dream that I sounded crazy talking about. And now all of a sudden, the person who I looked up to the most was like vetting for my work. And so people ask me, like, what were the shifts you made in your consciousness? Like, what was happening in that time to have your reality change so much? And I realized it was stepping into my dharma, my soul's purpose. And I realized that dharma, which we'll have a deeper conversation about, me not living in alignment with my dharma was the reason I had those health issues. Me shifting to live in alignment with my purpose made the issues go away. And I know you're laughing because I feel like you have a similar story. And here we are. I wrote three books on this and another one, A Yogic Path, and created my coaching institute, have trained over 2,000 Dharma Soul Purpose coaches, and bringing this work out into the world. And I share this because it's like we all have that thing that's like the crazy dream that we don't know if it's going to happen, and just trust that when you are living in alignment with your truth, you start to experience these synchronicities, and these synchronicities will guide you to a place that your soul could never imagine right now. So let go of the control, right? Because if you try to control it, it can't be this magical story, right? Instead, just follow the breadcrumbs, because the breadcrumbs are the pathway that your soul has designed for you, but also follow the obstacles, because the obstacles are your soul's unique curriculum to help you to actually embody this dharma.
Hey there, guys. Quick question. What is your relationship with your soul's purpose? Have you thought about it? Are you deep in it? Are you already living it? Or is it something you've always wanted to live but not quite sure how to? Well, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want support, it's something that I absolutely love doing. So please don't hesitate to reach out as well if you need support in your soul purpose space. It's amrit.coach/life. Book in a call. I'll see you there. And with that, back to today's episode. I love the idea of synchronicity burgers, just synchronicity stacked on top of each other. The way, man, there is so much to unpack in there. Thank you so much for sharing such a raw version of everything you went through.
You guys got the real version here.
Oh my God, that was incredible. I couldn't help but smile because I have a very similar story where I got certified by Mindvalley and there was a whole set of synchronicities that led to that as a coach and trainer. And then 12 months later, after I left that training, I emailed Eckhart Tolle School of Awakening, and I was like, hey guys, do you guys train teachers? Like, you've got a School of Awakening by Eckhart Tolle? Like, come on. And they didn't have a program at that point, but 12 months later, they invented a program, and they're like, hey, do you want to do it? And I was like, great. And they're like, it's $20K. And I was like, oh, I don't really have $20K right now. And then I wrote that back to them saying, hey, I'll do it next year. Don't stress. Please. Thank you so much for creating the program. And they're like, well, we can offer you 10. And I was like, 10? And I was still unfortunately embarrassing at that time. I was like, hey, I can't afford this, but I'll do it for 20 next year. And they invariably were like, they emailed back and they were like, hey, because you were part of this email chain that we've been having for about 12 months, would you do it complimentary for a really great testimonial for the program? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm going to get coached by Eckhart Tolle? Like, what are you, like, for free? Like, what is happening? And that was a massive affirmation for me on my path. So I totally, like, I couldn't help but smile when you were like, when you're on your path, synchronicities open up, things that happen. And, you know, what Deepak Chopra means to you is what literally like Eckhart Tolle meant to me. I was like, oh my God, like my mentor, like, Power of Now, like, changed my life, right? So yeah, I couldn't help but smile. That was a smile. I wanted to start somewhere practical for some people. It's like there's 3 dosha types. Can you talk to us about the dosha types really quickly? Because I think that'd be really useful for people to just quickly digest.
For sure. So the word dosha is the mind body types in Ayurveda. So Ayurveda, world's oldest health system, sister science of yoga, really based on the fact that there's no one size fits all approach to health, to wellness, to spirituality, to yoga, to anything. But it really has to do with your unique doshic constitution, which is how many of all 3 of these that you have. So the 3 doshas are vata, which is air, pitta, which is fire, and kapha, which is earth. So to make it easier, I'll just say air, fire, and earth. So when we think about air, if I have like a lot of air in my mind, what do you think that would be like? How would you describe that? An
Probably
airy mind.
scattered, feeling a bit buffered in your mind. Yeah, scattered is probably the word that comes to mind. A bit loose, a bit inconclusive, indecisive. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Like we have words like airy fairy, airhead, space cadet. So we even are understanding this in our language. Now, if I said, "Oh, I feel like I have a lot of air in my stomach," what do you think that would be?
Yeah, it's bloating. Yeah, 101. Yeah. Yeah,
Bloating.
gassy. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And air, is it cold or is it warm most of the time?
Generally cooler, isn't it?
Cooler. Yep. And dry, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
those are the qualities of air. So I'm going to have, in my mind, some anxiety, insomnia, scattered thoughts, being a little bit all over the place when I'm imbalanced, too much air, my stomach, bloating, gas, constipation, my skin dry, eczema, I'm cold all the time. So if those things sound like you have excess air energy. Now, the next one is fire, pitta. So if I said, I'm right, oh, that person's really fiery, how would you describe them?
Angry, passionate. Yeah, intense. I'm using words that people use to describe me, I guess, at times. But yeah, fiery, angry, passionate. Yeah, that sort of stuff.
Exactly. Like we even
Enthusiastic.
have cartoons of like the fire coming out of their head and like a fiery person, they're a go-getter, they're ambitious, they are disciplined, they're hardworking. But the shadow side is they can be impatient, they can be angry, they can snap. Now, if I said I have a lot of heat in my body, what do you think that would mean?
Yeah. What it would mean to have a lot of heat in your body? Like lots of sweating, I guess, but then
Mhm,
also general discomfort at times. You'd want
mhm,
things to be cooler around you. A lot of the times, you'd be probably selecting colder foods just to chill out a little bit, I imagine.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so you would be, like, kinda hot and bothered, right? Like, you kinda want the AC on all the time, which kinda makes you a little bit irritable. So in Ayurveda, our digestions are called Agni, which is your fire. So we all have a digestive fire. So if you have too much fire, that's gonna be hyperacidity, heartburn. Your heart's literally burning, right? So if you have acid reflux, also if you have acne, hives, rashes, this is all a sign of too much heat because heat moves up, right? Just like the top bunk is warmer than the lower bunk. So when there's too much heat in the body, it tries to leave the body, erupts in the skin. So I'm more of Vata Air one, the first one I told you about. I'm very artistic, I'm very creative, but it was hard for me to start a business. And so I was trying to make myself become a Pitta. So I was listening to Gary Vee, to Big Sean. I was drinking hot ginger tea. I don't like spicy food. I was just trying so hard. I'm like, I want to be a Pitta. I want to be one of those people who like gets things done. And I erupted in hives. And that's never happened to me in my life because it was too much heat that my body just couldn't hold. It was not meant for me. I was trying to become someone else. Whereas for you, that probably just comes naturally. You probably are trying to, cool down, take it more easy. This is why you like Eckhart Tolle, which we'll get into him. He's very kapha. He's the third one. So it's funny because we're designed, our dharmas were designed in relation to our doshas. We were designed to have the energy to support us in living our soul's purpose. And I'll bring it back to that. So third one, kapha, earth energy. So if I said, oh, she's so earthy, how would you describe this person?
Mellow, a bit, maybe even borderline sluggish would be the shadow, I guess. But mellow, relaxed, centered, grounded. Yeah.
Exactly. We all think of the earthy woman with the flowy skirt. She's breastfeeding her baby, bare feet, talk slow, I think Australia probably has a lot of Byron Bay has a lot of that. That earth mama boho, like they're just kind of cruising. So Amrit, if I just showed up on this podcast and I talked like this the whole time, how would that make you feel?
Super relaxed, but also, I'm hoping no one's driving while they're listening to you right now.
A little impatient though, right?
Yeah.
A little like, okay, girl, we got an hour here. Keep it moving. Okay, so your relationship with this energy is your relationship with the kapha dosha. I'm going to tell you a funny story. I actually saw Eckhart Tolle speak once. And he came out real slow on that stage, sat on that chair, looked out at us for a while, and then he's like, do you exist? And it's like half of the crowd was like loving it. And the other half was like, why did I pay for this? And it's like, are you real? It's just like, I think there were more pauses than there were words. I'm like, yo, I'm in the wrong business. I talk way too fast for these guys. Like, I need to slow it down if I want to go big. But, it's like, that is the kapha, the earth energy. Earth moves slow. It has its own rhythm, its own nature. So your response for the person listening to that, if that felt peaceful for you, if that felt like, oh my God, that was a really nice invitation to go slow. Like I just took some deep breaths. It's like, you want the kapha, you're craving the kapha, you're ready for the kapha. If that was like, oh my God, I needed to just 2x, 3x to get through that. Like that was so slow. That was a waste of my time. She needed to talk faster. Okay, then you actually need more kapha, even more, because when we're resistant to that, that shows then we're definitely in our more air and fire energy, because both those energies are fast moving. Tornadoes, fires, fast, earth, slow. So we can look at these doshas and everything in speed and quality and in digestion, personality and dreams. Like the list goes on of how you can see them.
Right.
So
this is where you get your obstacle is your curriculum.
Exactly. So people who are born more kapha, more of this earth energy, are meant to be space holders. Oprah. Why do we love Oprah so much? It's not that she had the most riveting thing to say, but it's that she could sit down next to anyone and make them feel safe, heard, understood. So they could share parts of themselves that they would have never shared with anyone before. Kapha. Tony Robbins, he literally has you walking on fire. He's like, we are going to unleash the power within. The crowd's going crazy. You're walking on coals. You know what's happening. You're signing up for the next level. Like it's like pure fire energy in there. Whereas like Vata is like Joe Dispenza, it's like quantum, timelines, universes. Does this reality even exist? Well, let me tell you this. And it's like, blah, 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 and it's like so ethereal. You've blasted your Kundalini open. Your pineal gland has expanded into universal source consciousness. It's like all of that air, space energy. So it's really cool because we can start to see like, what are we drawn to? And honestly, the dosha that you have the most resistance to is the one that you need the most.
That's really interesting. As you're describing this, I'm like, why is there not a Marvel dosha universe? Like, I can't tell when Joe Dispenza and Gary Vee and Tony Robbins. That would be so epic. I would totally watch that. Yeah, one of the things that I find really interesting also is that there's those three are, like you said, air, fire, water, but then underneath there, you can actually be a hybrid or a blend between the two. Because when you do your online quiz, which I'll put a link to for everybody that wants to go find out their dosha and go even a little bit deeper, you've actually got, I think, 9 archetypes. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I myself find that in winter, I'm Kapha Pitta, but in summer, I'm Pitta Kapha, and it flips. It's really been a huge, like thing to recognize and learn that and sort of know that, hey, in winter, I'm slower, and to be okay with that a little bit at times as well, because it's like, oh, things aren't moving as fast as they normally do. And then it's like, oh, actually, spring will come, and then, you'll be more Pitta than Kapha at that particular time. That's a great time for me to start projects, seed projects. Whereas being Kapha is also like a great time during winter for me to like reflect, build the vision, audit everything, get prepared, and that sort of stuff. So it's like I manage my energy throughout the year based on the hybridness of my dosha, if that makes sense.
And that's intuitive you to pick up on because these natural cycles are there for a reason. So fall collectively is air time, right? It's getting cold, dry. That's why we're like back to school season, trying on new identities, like everything's shifting, right? Then as we move into winter, it's getting colder and wetter. We're going into that earth energy, right? The kapha dosha. We're hibernating. We want to eat more soups, warm foods. Everything's slowing down. Then as spring picks up, the heat picks up, we move into pitta, the fire season, which is really the season of the summer, getting things done, taking action, traveling. So we naturally are meant to have these seasons and cycles throughout the year. We even have them on a 24-hour basis with the circadian rhythm. So if you really want to nerd out on this, the hours of, so let's say you wake up at 6 a.m. The hours of 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. are kapha, which is earth. So this is the time to slowly start your day, right? Like drink some lemon water, do some breath work, open up your body because the earth, the sun is just rising and you are just rising. Now the hours of 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. are fire, right? Sun is highest in the sky. Your digestion is the strongest. This is the best time to get things done. So if you have like tasking to do, schedule it between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., we shift into vata, airtime. This is the best time for your creativity, right? So this is if you want to like do your graphic design or, write something, this is the time because now we're kind of like, we did the main thing we needed to do. So we're like, okay, I can be a little bit more creative now and connect to kind of the non-tangible. Then 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., we shift back into kapha time. Sun is setting. So in Ayurveda, they suggest actually going to sleep before 10 p.m. because 10 p.m., we move back into this fire time, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. That is, so the sleep that you get in this time is double as effective as the sleep that you get after 2 a.m. And now with science and all these scientists, Andrew Huberman and started to talk about it, it's true. But in the Vedas, they say it's because there's still solar energy on this earth from the daytime when the sun first sets. So if you're asleep in that time, you're receiving that solar energy that's still here. Whereas what most of us do because of blue light, we're on our laptops, we're not connected. We don't even sleep until way past 10 p.m., maybe even past midnight. We lost those incredibly rejuvenating hours. If you look at most spiritual traditions, they wake up at 4 a.m. and they do their sadhana, they do their practice there because 4 a.m. was actually the time that the veils between the two worlds were the thinnest. So it's the most powerful time. Like in Kundalini, they do kriyas, Tibetan, they do chants. So all of this actually is based on Ayurvedic science that now we're able to see. So you can actually schedule your days with the doshas, we also have doshas with menstrual cycles as well. So women are also operating with the lunar cycle. So when you're menstruating, it's a kapha earth time. So be inwards, you're in your inner winter. Then your follicular season after, you're in your inner spring. So this is a really good time for you to, do new things, do cardio, have spring sprouts, Brussels sprouts, light vegetables, start something new. Ovulation, pitta, fire, summer, get things done, give your big talk, ask for a raise, have sex, do those things. And then luteal phase, you're going into your fall, vata, airtime, finish things up, strength training, getting ready for your hibernation. Everything in life is seasons. Everything in life is cycles. We live in this society that glamorizes summer all year round, and it's not sustainable because you will be stuck in a summer that is not true to the next summer that you could have if you allowed yourself to go into the winter.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines. And
he's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing. And Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. Oh, man, the way you said that. So my wife and I used to travel to, she was my girlfriend at the time, but we used to travel to Europe every year in winter, because winter in Melbourne's super hard. Like, it's just cold, it's damp, it's very dark. Melbourne's a bit of a bowl in energy here in Australia. And so we'd go do 2 summers. So we'd have summer here, which is amazing. Then we go to Europe for a month and have the most amazing summer there. And we did that for like 7 years, right? And then it was the 1 year where she went traveling on her own and I stayed at home that I went through a winter. Oh, was it hard to go through winter after having gone through that many summers? And actually, that was the winter the Inspired Evolution was born, because I was trying to consolidate all the energy of all those summers into one hibernation mode, and it was really, really tough. And anything that wasn't serving me, which was like career, job, blah, blah, like it was all just like, oh, I can't do this. And boom, out popped the Inspired Evolution as a podcast. So I totally resonate with the way you're saying that, like, yeah, we need actually the cycles to be in a really healthy symbiosis. Otherwise, we're going through this. Yeah. And the society does like evangelize summer so hard, right? And it's a beautiful time of year. But I think maybe as I've gotten older and I've become a parent, actually I've started to appreciate all the seasons a little bit better, because even becoming a father has been a season of life in many ways as well. Yeah. Hey,
everything is born from the winter. Everything is born from the darkness. The darkness is the void. The darkness is the womb, kal, that they say. we fear the darkness so much because it's the unknown, but it's only when you go into those unknowns and you let go of everything that you are not, that you remember who you are. And it's hard because sometimes we manifest these dark nights of the soul. I went through one. I was married and I learned about the infidelity of my then husband, and it was so like the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my entire life, because it was just like overnight my entire reality had shifted. But I could see that I needed to be pushed off the abyss, to realize that there's a feather bed on the other side, and that the version of me that I was meant to become could only come through going into this darkness. But when we're in the darkness, we're trying to cling on to anything we could hold on to. We're like some form of comfort, some form of safety, some form of familiarity. But if we hold on, then we stay stuck in that previous version of ourselves. And I always say, after these dark nights of the soul, we're kind of like even going up elevators of consciousness, right? Like you have one realization, but if you can stay in the unknown longer, you have another and another and another and another and another. And the longer you stay in the void, the more magical life becomes. And then you stop being afraid of these void periods, but you actually see them as quantum leaps into these new realities that you could never be in if you were still on the conveyor belt of your former reality. And sometimes I believe spirit needed to make it as bad as it needed to for you to walk away. And often there are little signs and there are little like inklings, but we don't listen because, everyone around us says like life's tough, get a helmet, everyone suffers, get used to it, drink more coffee, take more Adderall, do whatever. But actually, one thing Deepak really showed me, going back to that story, my life had shifted so much. And I was like, the other shoe's about to drop. Like something bad is going to happen really soon because, when everything's going really well, just like wait for the shitty thing to happen. And I remember hearing about this concept of Kriya. Kriya is effortless flow when you're living in alignment with your Dharma. Synchronicities, meeting the right person at the right time. Playing this random episode of Amrit's podcast that has this like random chick you've never heard before and just telling you exactly what you needed to hear. And you're like, wait, was this like made for me? Yes, it was.
People know who you are, bro.
but this is the flow. And this is how life is meant to be lived. We're meant to be living in perpetual synchronicities, alignment. But what most of us are used to is we're living in karma. Karma is the bounded action by the universe. It's the barricades on the side of the highway that are saying, don't go there. In fact, we're going to make this really painful and uncomfortable and not in alignment with your truth, so you don't go there. Right? So, for example, in living your purpose, a lot of us, we have this dream, but that thing over there is going to make us more money. That thing over there is what everyone from our town does. That thing over there is going to make our parents proud. That thing over there is what my society, my wife, my whatever expects me to do. And we get off these exits. We get anxious. We don't listen. Get panic attacks. We don't listen. And sometimes it manifests as you needed to get fired from that job. You needed to have that health crisis. You needed to have that infidelity. You needed to have whatever that thing was for you to finally listen. And then to let go of, well, now I need another plan of instead, this is the period of my life where I'm rewriting every single story. Because when one story comes undone, the rest, all of a sudden you start seeing it. Your perception increases. You become more intuitive. You're seeing, are these friendships in alignment with me? Is this home in alignment with me? Is this vision of my life in alignment with me? You would have never had that opportunity without stepping into the void.
I definitely want to double click on alignment, and maybe I'll do that just a little bit later in the podcast. But I want to double click at the moment on we don't listen. Listening. There's so many questions in there for me today. And really, well, one of them is who's speaking, because I think so many of us on this path, I think there's probably three different types of people. And maybe I'm just grossly generalizing at this particular juncture in the podcast. But, when it comes to listening, there's some people that actively just can't hear their soul's voice, which is totally fine. They've just never wanted to listen or never thought about listening to it. Then I think a large contingent of those people that are tuning into this podcast are probably those that can hear their soul's voice, but have sort of pushed it down a little bit because that doesn't work. It's like, no, it's soul's voice. I'm not sure how that's going to really plan out. There's this, and then there's some people, such as yourself, which is like, yep, I'm in alignment. I know what my soul's thing is and just living it. And that's the conduit is open. The interesting thing is, it can be, like you said, there's this deep inner knowing almost. There's this deep inner voice. You called it the deep inner voice. I call it a deep inner knowing that, gives you some form of strength or courage to even, like, your dad's like disowned you, you're downstairs in your living room, you're in your knees full of like covered in tears, and you're just like, shit, I'm actually liberated. Like, let's go see what what this voice inside really wants to create and achieve through me in life. I don't know, what is that knowing, and our relationship to listening to it, I guess, is really at the heart of the question.
I think it's to ask yourself, if I chose all of this, if I was the director of this story, why am I choosing this scene right now? And the moment you ask yourself that, why this? Why did I choose this? What's the lesson here? And it doesn't come in like the voice of God, Morgan Freeman shows up. No, it's your own voice. And the question you asked, who is speaking? That we could have a deep conversation on that. I believe there's a mix. I believe there's your highest self, which is the part of you that knows. Maybe your highest self is even a future version of you that's already living that reality. I believe everything that we desire, we're desiring it because there's a version of us that already has it. So that yearning is in us so deeply because we know that on a level we're already living it, but it's not here. And that desire is propelling us.
Oh, it's my birthright. Wow.
Right. However, there's different octaves of desire, right? But then there's that like deep yearning thing that's coming from a place of ego, right? And that's the spiritual lesson. It's the discernment, of like, where is this coming from? Why do I want? And guess what? It's going to be a mixed bag, because the way that your Dharma is designed is it knows that you're more likely going to chase it if it makes you feel good. Right? So it's like, if you're meant to share your voice with the world, your ego is going to want to have a thing with fame. That's going to be a part. And you're like, I don't know why. I just want to be seen and heard by a lot of people. And it's like, and that's part of it. But then once you get it, you actually realize it was never really about that, but that was the dangly carrot to help you get there. Right? Maybe you know that you want to be of service, do philanthropy. So it becomes very much about money, but the money is a stepping stone. A lot of these desires we're meant to experience, so we go beyond it. Right? And eventually we do reach this point of moksha, liberation, that we're free of these desires, because we realize it's like a desire is really just our humanness that's propelling us, but we actually reach a place where there's no more lack. And that's when life actually becomes really fun, because then you're just like, my only mantra right now is, I don't know. I don't know. Spirit lead me. I guess I'm in Dubai now. Cool. Here we are. I don't know why. And it's just like, and letting go of the plan. I think having a plan, and I talk about that there's 5 different stages of living your Dharma, right? We can even go into them. But the first level, the first stage is really even believing you have a Dharma. 99% of people on this earth are still not at stage 1. If you ask most people, do you feel you have a purpose? They'll be like, I don't know, like, I live, I have a family, like that's my purpose. Most people wouldn't believe there's anything beyond that. So the first stage, which I believe everyone in your audience has reached, is, if I was born on this planet at this time, in this body, with this personality, with this ancestry, with this childhood, with these desires, with this personality, with these obstacles, there's got to be some sort of design to this. There's got to be some sort of reason I'm here listening to Sahar and Amrit have this conversation right now. Like, this isn't making sense. Check your phone. Are there angel numbers? We're in the vortex right now. There's got to be something going on here.
Check the clock. It's probably 11:11 right now. Sorry.
It's 11:11, 3:33, 4:44. Shout out wherever you are. If it was, take a screenshot and send it to us, because we're with you. Our future selves are all dancing together somewhere in Byron Bay, maybe. All right. So that brings us to stage 2. Stage 2 is spiritual awakening. Oh, actually, no. Stage 3 is spiritual awakening. What happens before spiritual awakening is self-improvement. I'm going to go on a journey to become my best self. I'm going to be more productive. I'm going to get fit. I'm going to unleash the power within. I'm going to read all the self-help and personal development books. That's what the whole personal growth space is in, self-improvement. This is a necessary state. right? I can't go into, I'm not even have the concept of spirituality if I have migraines all the time. If I have such bad digestive issues, I can't eat food. If I am having debilitating panic attacks, like we need to do the personal, we need to work on the mind and we need to work on the body, right? So that's where most of the personal growth, fitness, self-improvement stage is at. But then you reach a point that you realize, I am not a mind or body to improve, right? I'm not my mind, I'm not my body. There's nothing to actually improve, but rather I am a soul to know. And instead of trying to improve yourself, you shift into, how can I know myself? Who am I? What is this soul? What are these desires? What is the purpose of this all? And that brings us into spiritual awakening. You know, we start to, of course, someone listens to this podcast, you are all in stage 3, I believe, to find this. You are inspired. When you're inspired, the word inspire comes from the Latin word to breathe. You're breathing life into, you're excited, your eyes are open. All of a sudden, like everything you're experiencing, there's deeper layers, there's deeper meanings. You're looking back on your childhood and completely different views. You're like, oh my God, like my dad literally had no parents to raise him. He had no idea what being a father was like. And a war and revolution happened. He had to flee his country. And now his daughter is becoming a hippie in India. Of course he was going to say whatever he could. Like, so much compassion for him. Right? But that can't come from the place of, he's a narcissist and I'm an empath and this is the codependent, and that's all in the stage 2 language, right? When we go beyond that, it's like we're all souls trying the best that we can. Every single one of us. You know, so we start to learn, we start to see the patterns, we start to see the deeper things happening. However, stage 3 is a stage, it's not the final destination because we can then get stuck in the spiritual wonderland, right? Now I need to know my astrology. Now I need to know the Vedic astrology. Now I need to learn the human design version of the astrology and the gene key and the I Ching and, you know, all my past lives and ancestral wisdom. And of course, you got to get into the generational traumas and it's like, you know, and we all got to go to the Disneyland of spirituality, and there's a lot there. But what can happen if we get stuck in there is it becomes, we need to wake up the sheeple. We are awake. They are asleep. We need to awaken the masses from the evil who's taking over humanity. And it like becomes this like Star Wars thing that we like actually just like retake ego into spiritual awakening, which, I mean, if you just go to your local ecstatic dance, you're going to find that consciousness. So you definitely see that happen a lot of like an identity or a culture. I'm spiritual, so I talk like this, I dress like this, I behave like this. I've now replaced those norms with these. And the way to move past that is, spirituality is not about like knowing every single thing. Actually, these are just tools. But tools are just there to also help us go beyond. That yes, you are your astrology and you're your dosha and you're your this and you're that. You're also none of it. You're also all of it. And then you start to actually focus on what matters. Like, what matters in life? You know, like what matters in life is being a good father, being a good friend, being of service to humanity. And you don't actually need to know every single one of your gene keys and what's happening at that time, though that can be some fun mental masturbation, you know, but at the end of the day, it is mental masturbation. It's not actually really doing anything, right? But we can get stuck there. So in stage 4, we go into Dharma development, which is like, what are the tools and the practices that actually matter to me, that are going to shift my life in what impact I want to make? So maybe for someone it is Ayurveda. Maybe for someone it's manifestation. Maybe for someone it's art. It's events. It's whatever it is. But you start to actually really focus, right? We're moving out of the Vata, that air energy. We're moving now into that more focused action, the day in and day out. Like, you've had this podcast for 7 years. You could have said, you know what? I did this podcast. I did like 10 episodes. They were great. Like, what's next? You know, but the Dharma development is what led you into stage 5, Dharma embodiment. Dharma embodiment is when you are being you full time. There's this version of me at work, but this is the actual version of me that I don't have to put on the mask for. And every single area of your life will need to come in alignment to support your Dharma, because you realize you living your truth is the most important thing on earth, right? So the friendships that are not that are not showing up fully, your home, your patterns, your behaviors, like I was just in a 2 weeks in silence. This is actually one of my first conversations I'm having with anyone. Just so you know, I spent 2 weeks in silence and I was just thinking a lot. and I realized all of the energetic cords that I had going on all the time, specifically for me through my phone. All the people living in my phone who I don't see, great friends of mine who I had friendships with, haven't seen them in years, they live in my phone. And all of these ongoing conversations I'm having with them and keeping up in this voice noting, and like how I think I'm connecting with them because I'm sending them a voice note, but it's actually just reporting. I'm just like, hello, the report of my life is this. And then they send me the report of their life and we think it's human connection. But there's no eye contact and there's no presence. And we're not even in the same time space reality to actually receive. We're not actually even receiving any of the gems of human connection. I will receive so much more by being in silence with someone than having the report of everything that's happened in their life from the last time that I saw them. But we think that that's what connection is. We're just reporting rather than being. But what we're deeply desiring is just someone to be with us. So I told my friends, I'm like, I'm no longer voice noting. We can even get on a Zoom call, like have a cup of coffee on Zoom, like actually connect, but not this like thinking we caught up even from texting or watching each other's stories. It's like we've all become spectators of each other. So through my own living in my Dharma and then being in silence, it brought that forth. And these are the kind of things when you're in Dharma embodiment become more and more clear, because it's like, there's an energetic zap. There's another one. There's another one. So Dharma embodiment is really when you are living in full alignment with truth. And it doesn't necessarily mean now I found the career and this is what I'm going to do forevermore, but it's actually everything you do is your Dharma. The conversations that you have, your energy, the way that you show up, the way that you decorate your home, the way that you smile at someone, it's all your Dharma. And I see your Dharma as it's you in action, and I feel what shifts that is we spend so long like trying to figure out like what's the career, like what's the plan. And when you're actually living your Dharma, you kind of come back into this stage one, right? It's almost like this cycle and this thing of like, oh, and it's all my Dharma, except I'm aware and I'm conscious of it now. And the journey continues and continues.
There's that chop wood, carry water right there. But thank you so much for articulating all of the steps. That was profound. And man, I really want to hear more about your 2 weeks away. But I think at this particular juncture, we've done enough painting to be able to point someone to, like Dharma and Ayurveda, health, purpose, right? Because if there's certain points in the journey where you're off kilter with your health, you can focus on your health, and that's actually bringing you back. Like when you're like, I find myself saying this to some of my coaching clients, like stress is a free life coach in your life if you would just listen, right? It's so like you can listen to your health and like come back into alignment a little bit more. And it's like, oh, actually my soul's yearning for that. And, take the purpose step a little bit more in the health and the purpose. And I think it's because I think from the outside looking in, for most people, it's like, oh, she wrote a book on Ayurveda and then she wrote a book on Dharma. And it's like, maybe it's just an Indian thing. But actually it's more than that. They're intrinsically linked, one for one together, right? I'll just give you a quick space to shed some light on that.
Everything in life is connected. The way that you speak, the way that you feel, the way that you dress. This conversation is having an effect on your energy right now, which is having an effect on your blood, your breath, your pulse, your thoughts, the way that you're going to show up for the rest of the day. Nothing is in isolation, nothing is a void, and nothing is in a vacuum. We are so deeply connected to one another, let alone how deeply connected we are to our body. And we feel it. We literally feel the shift when you travel. You go to New York City or Sydney, energetically, you're going to start to calibrate to the consciousness there. You're going to be faster, a little bit more jittery. Like maybe you're going to like feel like you need to do a bunch of things because you're actually picking up on the collective consciousness, right? Now, all of a sudden, if we go to, the middle of nowhere, right? Like where is it the Aboriginals live in?
There's
the outback?
A lot of them live in the Northern Territory. Also Ayers Rock, Uluru, Alice Springs.
Right. So you go there, you go to a national park, all of a sudden your breath is slower. Your body is slower. Your consciousness, the quality of thoughts you have are very different. And your body's going to shift. Like we're always picking up on energy. We are always picking up on everything around us. So how can we say that it's disconnected when we are having these tangible experiences? Even the way that I start speaking will have a direct experience on how you feel at any given moment, right? That's how connected we are. So our health comes out of balance when it's telling us something is off, something is out of harmony. You're having a hard time digesting food. How are you digesting emotions? How are you digesting life? Are there undigested experiences you're in right now?
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines.
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. Collective consciousness, you've mentioned this a couple of times. Do you think there is a shift going on in society at large at the moment? Because it does seem like
I don't know,
these
Amrit, do you?
conversations are popping up. Like, how come we're having this conversation at this particular time? Like, it's ancient, but it's modern. It's, how do you feel about what's going on in the world at the moment?
I believe our souls chose to incarnate at this time where we are the first generation ever with the internet, which is actually a very feminine consciousness because it allows ideas to be spread very globally and very quickly. And it's such a gift to incarnate at this time because it is a renaissance of ancient wisdom. And, you're on the other side of the world right now. We're having this conversation. Back in Vedic times, we would have to meditate for many, many years to do this. And now here we are just doing this.
And even then we'd be getting lucky. But this is, it's really remarkable, isn't it?
And I believe there's a reason why our souls chose this. And there's a reason why someone's listening to this podcast is because you are a way shower. You are one of the first. You are a pioneer in this. And what a lot of people don't realize, because, we all kind of follow the same group of each other. We're like, everyone's already into spirituality. Everyone's already doing this. It's like, no, we all just follow each other on Instagram. Let's just say maybe at tops, there's 100,000 of us on Earth. That's like maybe at tops. That's still 0.001% of less than that of Earth. And I don't even and truly people walking in, I don't even think there's that many. So we are among the 0.0001%. And if you don't believe me, go to your local grocery store and get on that microphone and say, hey, who here is living their dharma? Who here believes they are a soul having a human experience? Anyone? Come to aisle 9. See if anyone shows up. Like, they might show up because they're curious. Go to the airport. There's thousands of people at the airport. Just say, hey, who here is here to raise the vibration of the planet? Maybe one other person. So we forget that it's actually a very small amount of us having these conversations who are able to keep up with this level of thinking. So if you're here for a reason. And a lot of us are waiting for this permission slip of like someone else to tell us like, okay, you're enough, or like, here's the microphone, like I want you to share, or like, here's the book deal, or like, you know, it's like we're waiting for the dad, we're waiting for the tap on the head, we're waiting for am I doing this right? It's never going to happen. You have to choose. One day I picked up a microphone and you picked up a microphone around the same time, 2017, and we just started. And that's it. And we're no different or better or wiser or anything. We just talk a lot, and maybe now we just got better at it. That's really all it is. And so that's this new conceptual age that we're in. And I don't know if you've heard, we're in actually a new, like historians are going to call this a new age. So we were in the information age. Everyone knows about that. Like the information age actually ended in 2020. So, okay, just a little overview of the ages because I love nerding out on this stuff. But so we were in the agricultural revolution, and that was when it was all about who owned land, right? The landlord. That's where the term comes from. So the person who owned land made the most money, had the access to most resources. Then we shifted into the industrial revolution, where it became about around factories and production. So the person who owned the most factories had the most resources, right? That's when schools were made up. You know, it was literally the reason why schools were made up for us to go to school from like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., which became the standard 9 to 5 model of our jobs, was literally to train children to become good factory workers later on. That's literally what it was for. It was like, how do we get them to do an 8-hour shifts for just the longest amount of time they could legally get the labor unions to agree to? Like this was all made up, guys.
And it hasn't changed much since then, but that's a whole nother podcast. So
it hasn't changed. So they're like, how do we get people to, like you lived it yourself, get used to this? We'll train them from they're really young. They'll know nothing else other than it. And so that was what this industrial revolution was about. Then we had the information age, which was like .com, you know, Microsoft, 4-year colleges, climbing the corporate ladder. And it became the person with the most information had the most resources. Bill Gates, you know, get the corner office, get a master's degree, get a PhD even. That's going to help you get successful. That's what our parents were in. And that's what they're trying to push us into, because that's what made success in that time. However, officially in 2020, and this is going to be in history books, we've shifted into the conceptual age, that we have excess information. You could literally go on ChatGPT and find anything out, right? The problem is people don't know how to conceptualize and synthesize this information. You can have an MIT degree on your phone, but you don't know what to do with it. And in fact, people are overwhelmed. There is analysis paralysis. It's like when you're at the grocery store and there's 50 different orange juices to choose from. You don't know, do I want medium pulp, light pulp, no pulp, this, that? I don't know. If there's one, you choose the one. You know, let alone dating. There was like my grandparents, there's one other person in their town, they got married, lived together for 60 years. Now forget about it. It's like, there might be someone better. It's like the illusion of options, right? Dating apps, social media. So we're in this, like, there's so much information. There's so many options. We go on social media. We're like, shit, that person's a travel blogger and they're living their best life. Maybe I should be a travel blogger. But this person started their own business in their basement. Now it's booming and maybe I should do that. Oh, but this person, you know, has kids and they seem so happy with their family. Maybe I should do that. But this person just had a glow up after their divorce and maybe I should do that. And it's like, we don't know, you know, we're exposed to all these different things. So the people who will have access to the most resources in this new era are the ones who can help others conceptualize and synthesize this information. Which is why coaches are needed, which is why guides in any way are needed. Just people to help you hold space, meditation, mindfulness. These things are gold in this new era because we actually need time away to hear our own inner voice. And most people, they can't yet hold that space for themselves. And so they need a coach. They need someone to create that container to help them listen. And that's what a good coach does. It doesn't tell you what to do, but rather allows you to hear your own inner voice.
Yeah, because you've got a coaching certification that you offer up to people. Tell us a little bit about that just while we're here.
Yeah. So Highest Self Institute is my school that we have 4 different certifications now. So one is a 6-month training all about becoming a Dharma, a soul purpose coach. So you learn all of the different methods. Like I've talked a lot about it, but actually now how do you help someone find their Dharma? Like there's a 5-step process called the Dharma Blueprint, and you guide people through and you can actually create a career. We've had thousands of students create full-time careers, leave their corporate jobs as purpose coaches, and also being hired by companies. Because right now we're in this era of quiet quitting, where people are still at their jobs, but they're not really present and they're not really there. And that's costing companies a lot of money. So a lot of our students have now been hired by companies to align people with their purposes within the organization. And, a lot of companies actually, for example, Time Inc. have replaced just hiring like HR people with hiring coaches, because they know that can get people go a lot further. So we have our purpose coaching, embodiment coaching, soul business mastery, spiritual coaching. So that's all on highestselfinstitute.com.
Epic. Thank you for that. Now, back to what you were saying about the 0.0001%. Oof, packs in a bit of responsibility, doesn't it?
If you're here for a reason.
I think so many of us on the path can feel, the more that we're here for. And yet it can be at times so overwhelming, like you said, paralysis by analysis. And like you said, you and I potentially, I love your work. So, anyway, you and I just picked up a microphone 7 years ago and we're just like, you know what, this matters enough to me to sort of talk about it. And amazing things have happened since then. And it really is an incredible age to be a part of. If that our souls have chose to incarnate into, it's absolutely ridiculous. In here, I think it's, I can't let you go today without asking a question around service. I just would love to hear because you've always idolized people that were of service. They've always been inspirations of yours. They've always inspired your evolution. But when you start to get into Dharma, I'm yet to find someone who's like, Dharma it was to be narcissistic. Like it's never like inward facing. It's always like, oh, what can I do for others? So your thoughts and your riff on service, Dharma, anything in there you'd like to share on service?
So the funny thing is that the universe gives us these desires, gave us both the desire to pick up microphones and start these podcasts. And it felt really good for us, but it was actually not about us. It was about us being of service. And that's what it is when we actually follow the true desires from our souls. It's always of service to humanity. So your Dharma is the integration of your highest form of joy with your highest form of service. Because the shadow of service that I was in working in NGOs is like, I hate this sucks, but someone's got to do it. And that's what most people, like activists, are in. The world is corrupt. No one's taking responsibility. So I have to be the one who's doing it. And that energy of like resentment and anger, which actually just like fuels more anger. And it's why, again, and I was in the activist space, most activists burn out and quit. Because it's coming from that energy. It doesn't feel good. And if something doesn't feel good, you're just not going to do it for that long, right? So the energy of joy, you're going to sustain something. If I love doing it, like I love being here on this podcast with you. I love sharing with my students. I love having these conversations. I could do it forever. I'm like, I don't want this to end. I don't want this to be our last question. Let's keep going, because I'm in my joy and I'm like, whoa, and it's helping people too, like double whammy, and like, that's how your Dharma is meant to be. Yes, there are going to be times that are challenging. Like then I have to respond to emails, but like, it's worth it for like the bigger picture of things. So I always say, follow the excitement, follow what is making you come alive. What are the podcasts you want to listen to? What are the books you want to read? What are the conversations you want to have? If you could go on any kind of retreat in the world, what would it be on? Like, what are you right now? I'm very obsessed with Rajasthan. I'm having a moment with it. And I'm like, I just want to be in like a Rajasthani palace living my, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Bajra Mastani, but I'm like, I want to live my Bajra Mastani life right now.
I can totally do that. It's like, yes, I get it. I totally get it.
And I'm like, something is calling me back to the motherland, like back to this place. And who knows where it will lead me. But that like heart energy, you know, we're so used to doing things out of like, I have to, and it's shifting from the energy of discipline to devotion, right? Like, Amrit, when you tune into the word discipline, how does that feel for you? Like, what words come up?
It's angular. It feels militant. It feels rigid. It does feel upright. Bit stiff.
Right. Discipline is I have to show up for it. I gotta like go to the gym. You know, it's coming from the head. You know,
There's a push.
Push, exactly. Now the word devotion. How does that feel for you?
There's definitely a pull. It feels river. It feels flow. It feels humble. It feels giving. It feels sacred. It feels aligned. It feels flowing.
Like I could feel my heart when you said that. It's like it's coming from this place of like, you know, devotion is like, thank you. You're in gratitude for even doing the thing. And that's the energy of your Dharma that you're like, thank you for choosing me. Thank you that I get to do this thing. This gets to be my life. Oh my goddess. It's like, it's such a shift. So for those of you listening, what are you devoted to? Make a list of all of the things that you're devoted to in your life, and then start to even notice the patterns and how can it come together? What are the qualities of it, right? Words. Can you connect it to a dosha? Is it a lot of this air energy involved? Creativity, art, spirituality, ideas. You definitely have some vata in you. Is it a lot of fire energy? You know, building businesses, getting things done, athletics, like actually creating tangible things. You know, you have some pitta, some fire in you. Is it connecting, diving deep, holding space? You know, you're going to have some earth, kapha in you. And then you could go even further. I have 9 Dharma archetypes: the visionary, teacher, activist, entrepreneur, researcher, nurturer, entertainer, artist. You can take my quiz, dharmaarchetypequiz.com. Which one of these are present in you? And it starts to be all pieced together. And then you realize that you have been assigned to the most magical jigsaw puzzle of life. And you were given all these random pieces. You didn't even know you were making a jigsaw puzzle. You just thought, oh, this is just who I am. And as you go, you're like, oh shit, I'm playing a game here. And like this chapter that I'm in that seems really random, and it's like the chapter I really don't want to be in, and it freaking sucks, and I can't wait to the next one. Oh, this is actually the part of your memoir that you're going to keep telling the story about. Like, Lord, did I want to talk? Did I ever think I would be telling anyone like, yeah, my dad disowned me, and then I lived with rats in India, then I lived with my grandma, and then I got rejected by 30 publishers. That was like definitely like the part that I was like, can we skip forward to the world famous author? And it's like, but for some reason, y'all just want to keep talking about that, you know? But it's like, that's actually the thing that like defined me more than anything else, you know? And then again, coming back into it 2 years ago with my divorce, I was like, wait, I'm a spiritual teacher and author now. How did I not know about this? New version of me, death, rebirth, you know, and it's perpetual. And like whatever, there's always, you know, I love the symbolism of the snake, because there's always like the snake in the corner. We're always like so focused on like the butterfly, you know, and it's like, and there's always a shadow, but the shadow is where the snake sheds its skin from. Right? You're not meant to know everything right now. So drop this illusion that you'll ever know and you'll ever have it figured out and will always, you know, be this like perfect balance. There's always going to be something simmering in the pot that you don't know about. And when it's ready to be attended to, you will attend to it and life will take you on a new journey. And guess what? It always ends up better than you could ever imagine.
Sahara Rose. Officially Sister Bear. Thank you so much for doing this with us. My goodness. Wow. Ayurveda, Dharma, so many places we went to, cycles, seasons, dosha. Like we went into thank you so much for your generosity and sharing yourself so openly and abundantly here with us for our own personal transformation. And I can sit here and totally thank you for today's conversation, which is what I'm trying to do. But it's not lost on me that especially the work, as deeply as you carry it, is always built moment to moment upon your entire life's walk and work. And you mentioned this, maybe it was last life's work as well in this particular instance. So just want to honor you and acknowledge you for the being that you are. Thank you so much for you, and thank you so much for being here with us today, man. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a great first conversation to have out of silence. So I appreciate it. I'm like, I got a lot to say right now.
Feel blessed for that. For those that are tuning in, I will put a link to the HSI High Self Institute. You can guys go check out a whole bunch of offerings that are there. We discussed them earlier. And also the quiz. Go do the quiz, have some fun. And you don't have to walk into who you're going to be. It's just a way marker for your soul to be able to, it's like a permission slip. This is who you really are. Off you go. Sahara, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Channeling. The first time you started channeling and you would guns and avguns and all this stuff sort of pointed at, were you disconcerted? Yeah.
So I would just start writing, and then there would be periods that my fingers would be typing, but I didn't really know what I was saying. And then I would reread it and be like, wow, that was really good. So I would start to notice, it would be kind of a bit into an hour into writing, I would kind of get into the state. So then I just started to just trust it. And I just thought, okay, I'm in a flow state. Right.
Yeah.
But then when it started to be guna, subguna, how this guna is connected to this dasha, and all these Sanskrit things that I've just never known about. Yeah. I just trusted it, and I just kept writing it. And then I started to have dreams, and the dreams actually showed me I was flying over India, and it showed me this river called, and it had a map on it. It said Sarasvati River. And it was this is where you're from. And so I woke up from that dream and I Googled it, and this river dried 10,000 years ago.
Whoa.
It doesn't exist.
In present time reality, but it doesn't
exist. But my dream said this is where your soul is from.
Wow.
And what's crazy is I was dating an Indian guy, and his grandfather was a pundit, and he had this temple on the Ganga in the middle of nowhere. And I went with him, and it was deep. It's actually where Sita went under the ground in the Ramayana. So it's a really sacred place, but there was nothing there. So he built temples and this and that. That's exactly where the Sarasvati River was. So it was my soul manifested meeting that person, having that relationship, to go to the exact site that I also remembered being under a tree. And I had 8 kind of students around me, and I would just be teaching them. And then I also remembered, because now I've studied past life regression a lot. I do past life hypnotherapy. I remember in this ancient Ayurvedic time, they were translating the text to kind of be religious, and it wasn't. It was they were
before
they
that
were
was
changing,
a bit more sciencey. Yeah,
exactly. And I remember in this time, in that lifetime, I said, this needs to be true to the actual roots of the earth, of what it's from. And they're no, we're changing it into this. And I said, I'm going to come back as a woman and bring Ayurveda back to the people. And so it was my soul chose to come back into it. And it was it made no sense, but I just kept feeling drawn.
Dude, 2 weeks of pure silence. How is that? Where were you and how was it?
I did it in my apartment, which was way more challenging.
Whoa. You're not out in the mountainous nature or the river. Whoa, just in your apartment.
So I was in Guatemala for 2 weeks before that. And I was studying with indigenous elders on Mayan womb healing. And it was really, really profound. And one of the women there, she's a medicine woman. And she's have you ever done a dieta? And a dieta is basically when you work with one plant, but a non-psychedelic plant. And she really recommended doing a rose dieta, which is really working with the divine feminine, but also boundaries. And it just kind of, I was okay, I didn't really know fully what it was. And then I ended up doing this dieta. So basically I have roses everywhere, but I would wake up and just drink rose tea, meditate on the rose and just be in silence. And I wasn't meditating, I was thinking, but it gave me a lot of clarity. And you start to work with the consciousness of that plant. So I started to just see things from a different perspective. A lot of truths revealed to me of, again, a lot around like energy leakages and detachment. There was a lot around that, and really looking at all of the things that I'm attached to, like this apartment or friends
the rose actually is like one of the most profound protective plants for spiritual work, apparently, right?
It is the highest vibration plant on this earth. So, I mean, it shifted my life like even more than like ayahuasca and San Pedro have. Because it's integrated in your life. You know, sometimes
it's
you do
an energetic upgrade.
Yeah. Sometimes you do these plant medicines, you have all these ideas, all these things, but it's like, then you come home and you almost like go back to old patterns. But with this, it was like, I was home, like with all my temptations, you know, with the phone, with the this, with the that. And that made me start to really notice my inclinations and my relationships with all of these things. So yeah, moving out of my place end of November, and we'll see. So it literally was just like, but it was just the wisdom of the plant was like, detach myself from this, detach myself from that. And then it got to a point of like, I actually don't need anything. So
that's so profound. Wow. The connection, because connection's my highest value. So when you were talking about voice memos and stuff, I was like getting a bit slapped in the face at that point, because like, especially being a dad, you just so many things. And most of my friends I'm connected to via voice memos. And I was like, when was the last person I gave that person a hug? I was like, oh, wow, it's been like 7 months, 8 months, like, because I actually physically gave that person who's really close to me a hug. And it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird, I have to say. That was really,
I'm like you. Connection is one of my biggest values, but I realized just like how much time I was even just spending on all these voice notes. Like anytime I would go on a walk, it was like, oh, I have to respond to this person. Oh, I needed that. It was like all these open tabs. Whereas if you have a conversation with someone, there's a close. Whereas with a voice note, it's just an
ongoing conversation forever and ever. Yeah.
And our brains are not meant for that.
Yeah.
You know? And so, and then also like, you know, I'm sure in your voice notes, you're sharing personal things, you're sharing personal shares. But let's be real. We often listen to these voice notes on 2x when we're not even paying attention.
Yeah.
So we're actually not even honoring that person
present.
and their share.
Yeah.
And we think like, and again, I so did it too, but it's like one thing that Dieta really told me was, for me, it was like, stop asking people for advice on what to do. You know, and it's like almost become like our way of like bonding with each other of like, I have this problem, like, let's dissect the problem together. And it's like, just like be with it. Cause you think it's connection, but it's actually not. Like you're now just bringing your problems to someone else. And a lot of what friendships are these days are like, you take turns to like complain. And then you're like, here's my problem. Let's dissect it. Okay, here, I had my 20 minutes airtime, time for your problem. And it's like, great seeing you. See you next month. And it's like, that doesn't leave any of us feeling better.
Hey there, Inspired Soul. You made it through to the end of another incredible podcast. Thank you so much. Absolutely adore Sahara's work and the way she carries it in the world. On screen shortly will be a few more episodes for you to dive in deeper to keep your inspirations flowing and your revolution brewing. Now, one of the key things in there I wanted to mention is something happened for me in the podcast when Sahara mentioned our Indigenous. I said they live, and it just felt very much like us and them. I didn't really love that. So I just wanted to course correct that a little bit and just say our Indigenous. That felt much more comfortable for me to sort of, you know, like the Indigenous of Australia. I was born here and they're our Indigenous. I don't identify as Indigenous myself, but they're our Indigenous. That felt much like, instead of like pointy finger energy. So I just wanted to clear that up. Thanks for humoring me, hearing me out. And as always, thank you so much for being so inspired to evolve and just walking this path by my side. I pinch myself every day just knowing that you're here, tuning in, listening in. It is such a vibe. Thank you so much, Touchwood. For all of you that are subscribed to the channel, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It helps everything that we're doing here, championing positivity, peace, prosperity, wisdom around the world. And for those of you that aren't subscribed, once again, please do take a moment, hit that subscribe button. It helps everything that is happening here at The Inspired Evolution. Thank you so much in advance for doing so. And as promised, episodes on screen for you to go deeper. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in another one. So yeah, and if you haven't yet subscribed, also there's my face icon. You can click on that thing to hit subscribe as well. It's A lot of subscribe energy today. Pardon me for that. But really do appreciate all your subscriptions. It really, really helps with everything. That's how we get guests like Sahara on the podcast. And so I'll see you in the very next episode. Go ahead and click it, and I will see you in that one. See you there.